back to another episode of Everyday Bubbly with Taylor and Allegra.
What up?
We are cheersing.
So delicately, these are kind of full.
Dink. With a delicious gin jamboree.
I think we've talked about these on the podcast before, but honestly,
still a favorite.
Still a favorite.
Still a front runner. When you start to just drink gin more, I come back to this recipe.
Mm-hmm. I think that there's so many ways to like make the different jams that you use literally make such a big difference.
Yeah, so this one we're using peach, but I know you've said you've used like berry and you've used like strawberry.
I think I use, right now I have a mixed berry that I'm very into, but I've done just like a straight blueberry before too. Yeah. So I don't know. I just love this in all forms and fashions.
I kind of wonder, I really love a good like hot pepper jelly.
Oh, that could be
like a little
interesting.
Spicy gin jam.
It'd be almost like margarita adjacent. Yeah. If you top that off with like a lime or something, that could be really cool.
I think that's going to be the next recipe, the next one we try.
I was also thinking how they have like apple jellies and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. That could be kind of like fall-y.
Like very, fall forward.
Like very
and topped
warming.
with an apple cider.
Ooh, that would be really good.
Mm-hmm. I've been drinking a lot of apple cider now too.
I think we're about to be like gin recipe book girls. But all the recipes are just different variations of our gin jamborees.
I know. If you guys have any good gin recipes, because I feel like I'm trying to venture out more with this spirit and, you know, I want to expand more than just a gin and tonic and like a gin and soda. So...
yeah.
And I haven't mastered a gin martini yet.
Yeah, I can honestly say I think I've made one martini in my entire life because...
it's hard. It's actually harder than it looks because like if you mess up with the amount of like vermouth, it tastes disgusting.
And I think martinis are supposed to be stirred, not shaken. I know that that's like James Bond's line, but I think that like isn't the right way to make a martini.
I think it just depends. And then there's like dirty or like super dirty or...
and then there's dry. What's the dry martini?
Is with the vermouth.
And then dirty is with olive juice. Mm-hmm. And then filthy is just like more olive juice.
Like it's all olive juice in the...
with a hint of gin.
I know, but then my favorite that I used to drink was with a vodka martini was just vodka. Vodka with a lemon twist.
Vodka or martinis in general are just an excuse to drink a shot and be
cool.
And think that you're mature. It's just straight alcohol. So, there's no mixer.
Our good friend Olivia, when I went to London, recommended going to this restaurant called Duke's that is just like a high-end, I think it's also a hotel. But she was like, it's the best martini. It's referenced in a movie called A Simple Favor that Liv said was like one of her favorite movies.
I've never seen that movie.
And so when I was in London, I went to Duke's and they pulled the little cart over and like made me a martini like right at the table.
What a vibe.
And it was very delicious. They only serve you up to two. So if you go like...
and then you're like cut off after
and then they're like, no more, go away. And you have to dress up. Like they won't let you in if you're not like if you don't have your shoulders covered. And like men have to be wearing, you know, like nice pants, a coat. I took a jacket with me and I had to put it on because I was wearing a spaghetti strap.
Wow.
Top, so
okay. I mean, I guess
I was the youngest person in there too.
By like decades, I'm sure.
But thanks, Liv, for that recommendation.
Yeah. So cheers to our little gin jamborees. What are we cheersing to today, Allie?
I'm cheersing to finally doing my taxes. It is
honestly, cheers to that.
It is April 6th.
You're cutting close.
I was getting it real close. And I finally sat down and did them this morning. It took me like 15 minutes. And I always am like, why did I hold off so long? Like I could have just knocked it out. But
I feel that I did my taxes Tuesday. So I'm like not much further along than you were. And I did the same thing. I like build it up in my head to be an all day event. Yeah.
And it takes like 20 minutes. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'm always like, did I do it right? Because I don't like have like someone helping me. I used to use TurboTax, but then I realized I was spending more than my returns were. So I moved to freetaxusa.com, which my parents were like, are you sure that's safe? And I'm like, yeah.
It says free.
Yeah, and it was free. How bad could it be? So this time around, when I get my $78 back, I can keep that. Treat myself to something real nice.
I hate doing taxes. but it's actually not that bad. But we've just built it up so much in our head. And
I mean, Adam's taxes are terrible. He's a business owner.
That's true.
He hires professional help, and he starts like,
and he has a payroll
months ago.
And, like,
yeah, exactly.
It's a whole process.
So I don't
I'm not
envy
that girl.
I don't envy him. I'm like, I'm gonna keep my simple. I have one W-2, and that's it. Take a standard deduction.
And you're done. You're golden.
No, not a homeowner. So
yeah, no.
What's
this
your
week,
cheers? Yeah.
I am cheersing to just hanging out with friends. I've had a very full week of like just friend
things.
Whether it's be happy hours or wine bar get-togethers or just like HEB sushi platters and like chit-chatting on the couch.
Nice.
I just had a very full week of like friendship things, and sometimes it's too much to like, I realize I do need a little bit of a break. I like been with other people.
Yeah,
you
gotta like recharge your own battery.
Yes. But it's always so nice to get to hang out with people and like explore new places. We went to a really good happy hour on, what was that, Wednesday?
Oh my gosh, it was so good.
And it was delicious.
I love Uchi.
Just being able to do things like that and filling up your cup that way, I think we like touched on this a little bit last time, but after the friendship episode, I think we both like reevaluated some friendships in our lives and like how we approach friendships. And that was something that really came up, was like, I want to build this really important community, but like work has to be put in to do that. So
exactly.
That's my cheers for the week, is just getting to spend time with friendies.
And yeah, like just changing it up and doing different things. It like, like you were saying, fills your cup in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah. So that's my cheers of the week.
All right, so we are gonna start this is one of another 3-part series that we're gonna do about something that sometimes can be uncomfortable, I think, for people to talk about, which is money. And we figured we'd break it up into a couple easy to kind of digest topics with how people, use their money and accumulate wealth, and sort of what that means to the both of us and how we look at things. But we figured week 1, we're going to talk about spending and expenses. And next week, we will dive into savings, income,
maximizing income. You can only save so much and like make a difference in your life. At a certain point, you need to start making more money too, to like offset some of that.
So different like income outlets. I think there's other ways to bring in more money, but also just like the discipline of saving.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Which can be hard.
And then our 3rd episode will be more about investing. And I will say, caveat, we are not professionals in this at all.
No.
And I think a big part of why we're choosing to do this series is you don't learn unless you talk about it. And like we've talked about some of these things to a certain extent, but like I think this needs to be a broader conversation, especially for women and especially in your 30s, where there's a lot of life transitions or like changes happening, and you just are looking to set yourself up now for long-term success. Like things happen.
Yeah.
So being able to cover some of those bases now.
I used to like avoid talking or even thinking about budgeting because I just thought it was this big, daunting, scary thing. And then when I started doing it like a year ago, I was like, oh, this is actually kind of fun. Like when you just challenge yourself a little bit and you get that discipline, it's like a muscle. You have to like work it in order to get better at it, and you'll see a difference.
Yeah, and I think that in society as a whole, money and sex are like the two things in politics. Such taboo topics. Like I know that I've like gotten into disagreements with friends because they like wouldn't tell me how much they made, which sounds so simple and petty. Like why did you care so much, Taylor? But I truly believe, and we'll get more into this in next week's episode, talking about like making more money. I think we need to support each other. Yeah. And how do you know if you're being underpaid if you don't know what other people around you are making?
And the people closest to you are going to be the ones that can help hype you up to have tough conversations if you need to go to your employer and ask for a raise. Like, that's not something that just comes naturally to be like, walk into a room and be like, I need more money. Like,
It's a very difficult conversation to have. But we're starting at the very, very basics. Before we get into the like that part, we're starting at the very basics, like Ali said, where we're just talking about like spend the fun part, which is spending money.
And the part that comes easiest to people.
Yes.
Like everybody spends money.
And then the also fun part about what you're spending your money on, including things like debts and car payments and student loans and all of that jazz. And again, we are going to be very real and vulnerable and
very open.
Very open.
We're open books on it. And we are not, like Taylor said, we are not pros by any means. But I hope that if you're listening to this, that maybe you'll relate to something. Maybe you'll have insights that you want to share with us as we are all going through this journey.
Yeah. So let's dive right in. I know actually as we were diving right in, Allie, I know that you have gone on a bit of a money journey recently. Do you want to give a little bit of backstory to that? Because I think that does really inform how we're going about this series.
I mean, I will say my relationship with money and budgeting is still fairly new. I really settled down and was like, okay, enough is enough. I was living paycheck to paycheck. I was that person that was overdrafting their checking account almost every month. I hated looking at my app, like my bank account app, and like seeing what was in there. And I went about just like, oh, I just got paid. I have money to spend. I'll go shopping. I'll go out to eat. I'll do all the things. And then by the time 2 weeks passed and I was waiting for my next paycheck, I'd be like, oh shit, like I am not in a good place financially. So actually my boyfriend introduced me to a software website called You Need a Budget. And I am now a firm YNAB preacher. And that's really
this is not sponsored. Like you've talked about this in just normal conversation.
I've gotten so many other people in my circle, my sister, friends, to look into using it. I'm not going to force anyone to be like, this is the tool, but it's worked for me. And so I'll be referencing it a lot through our discussions because it just is an easy interface and it really helped me see what I was spending money on. And I don't know, for the first time, I was going to talk about this next week, but for the first time in my life, I have a positive net worth. So that's like...
We love that.
That just happened like a month ago. And I'm like, crazy.
We love that.
So it can happen to you.
My money story, I feel like it's probably like relatively similar. I think my parents very much tried to instill good money habits in me at a very young age. I remember getting this specific like piggy banking system when I was probably like 8 or 9. And it was a 3-part system. And it was every time you got money, like allowance or birthday money or whatever, you're supposed to split it up in a specific percentage. So 2/3 of it, 50% of it would go into like long-term savings. And then 25% would be like fun money and 25% would be like medium-term savings. Yeah. And I think about that little piggy bank system. And
I want to see like a picture of this.
I'll find it. It was a black like box and it was made to look like books, kind of like 3 books in a row. And the bottom half of all of it in one section of the book was like your long-term savings. And then like one small section for the other 2. And I think that was from a very early on, that's kind of how I like was made to think about money. When I got older, my mom was a financial planner.
Oh, wow.
So there was a lot of like just awareness of that. But then I moved to Austin. Fun fact about me, I did not have a job for the first year. I could not, I was truly like textbook. I was miserable, honestly. And I would do like small odd jobs, like try and make money, but like I didn't have a consistent paycheck for a year and it was really, really hard. So I was like scrounging for every penny basically at that time. And I think I carried that mentality over for a really long time. And I've had conversations with my partner about how sometimes I'm a little bit I don't want to spend money on things because I'm like, well, I might need money for this, and this. But then I'll do the same thing you did. We're like, oh, I just got paid. So like now is the time to go and buy these $300 shoes that I've been looking at for 3 days. Like, no.
Yeah.
So it's easier for me to make a big purchase than it is for me to make little purchases sometimes, which is a very interesting dichotomy in my head.
I can see that though. Yeah.
Yeah. And then since then I've been able to get into it's always been very top of mind for me, but sometimes I just didn't feel like I was making enough to support my lifestyle.
Yeah, that's been a tough one. I feel like the lifestyle, and I know too previously that there were times when I should not have been buying the clothes, going out to eat, but it's sometimes very much like a keeping up with the Joneses when you're around other people. Like I've always been friends with people who are older too. So they were always making more money than me. They were always wanting to go out to eat. I was single at the time. So I'm always just like tagging along, and I was living a lifestyle that I definitely did not have the finances for.
Yeah.
So,
and I think maybe I was a little bit earlier on it than you were, like trying to buckle down. And I do think a big part of that was when my boyfriend and I were able to purchase our first home. And I will say we got very lucky. The price was very reasonable. Our down payment was like pennies. And we were so fortunate that our parents, both sets of parents, pitched in to help with our down payment, which is like not all parents can do stuff like that. And it made a huge difference for us. But I think that really threw into light credit scores, which could be a whole different fucking episode. But credit scores and the need to like plan a little bit more, because I had now much bigger ticket items. And also when I got laid off when I got fired, not laid off, let's be honest. I got fired when I was like 27. And that was another time where like finances were very unpredictable. And again,
especially if you don't have like any kind of backup savings, which I think we'll talk about more next week's episode, but that's scary.
It's scary. And again, you go back to that feeling of like living paycheck to paycheck Austin was a reasonable price city, but things have gotten expensive.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So even doing normal things just feel very expensive. So I guess let's talk about our biggest buckets. When we're talking about spending, like what our biggest buckets of expenses are.
Mm-hmm. So I broke mine down, like not including debts, which I know we'll talk about, because I do have debts that I pay off every month with minimum payments. Rent is probably a big one.
That's the biggest one.
Mm-hmm. Which for you would be your mortgage. For me still renting a house. Groceries and eating out. Mm-hmm. I like to fund those similarly. And then if I like eat out more, I just will move money and not buy as many groceries, but I try to keep it pretty 50-50. And then I would probably say after that, looking at my pets. I have 3 dogs.
And they're elderly.
So Kirby's diabetes and his insulin and Chico's meds and their food, vet visits. They have a vet care club so that I can actually take them for visits and not have them cost money. So I spend quite a bit a month on
I
my
actually
children.
didn't even think about like pets as an expense, because our pets, other than their food, like I don't think about separate expenses for them. That's and that's another point about like how everybody's expenses look so different. I think that's come up in everything that we talk about all the time, is like there are overarching guidelines, but things are so unique to the individual. My biggest buckets of expenditure are definitely rent, mortgage, that sort of like just home ownership things is one. Dining is definitely another one, whether that's groceries or eating out. Nick and I do cook at home like 5 to 6 nights a week, but I like to go out and like do happy hours and stuff like that. And those, even if you're doing happy hours, like shit adds up.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, we went to Matt's El Rancho the other day, Adam and I, and we each got a Mexican martini, we each got a quesadilla, and that was it. And it was almost $100.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That was on happy hour?
No.
Oh, okay.
But it was, Matt's El Rancho doesn't have happy hour.
Oh yeah.
But like the quesadilla is an appetizer.
That's an appetizer. That's a whole other thing. Oh my God.
The prices have just gone up. Inflation. Ugh.
But yeah, so rent, mortgagey type things, food, whether that's eating and drinking, which sometimes Nick and I love to go to like breweries or wineries or bars. And I actually had that as a separate line item.
Yeah,
like drinking was a separate line item.
I got drinks with a little martini icon.
Yeah.
Like, that's a separate category.
And then another big bucket for me is like health and wellness thing, whether that was my yoga membership, my gym membership when I used to go to Pilates or to CrossFit rather. if it's like my meditation platform, like that kind of bucket is actually a very big expenditure for me.
Yeah. I kind of have a treat yourself one that I will use. I'll fund a little bit for getting my nails done or getting my hair done or getting a massage, which I don't do every month, but I like just having like a cushion for taking care of myself and doing things.
So with having YNAB, it sounds like the answer to this is yes now. You have like a specific budget.
Yes. So it sets you up that you like build your categories. And then what YNAB preaches, like their number one rule is like you have to assign every dollar a job. So that means like when you get your paycheck, you literally assign every single dollar you have to a category.
Gotcha.
And that could be, and I do a similar like to your little piggy bank.
Piggy bank.
I do 50% towards needs. So that's rent, utilities, medical insurance, things like that. 30% towards fun things, and then 20% towards long-term investments, which is my retirement account. And currently it's my emergency fund.
Gotcha.
So, and my savings for a down payment. So we'll talk about that more next week, but that's kind of how I have my categories split up, and it helps because, but the second rule of YNAB is like, go with the punches. So if like you have an unexpected expense or you go out to eat and it's more than you had budgeted, you can pull money from your other categories. You just have to know, okay, I can't go get my nails done because I spent more on my dinner. Or I took some from my gas fund. So if I go to fill up my car, I'm going to just put $20 in, not fill it up all the way, which you don't have that problem anymore either.
As an electric vehicle owner, I never think about gas.
I have a gas category.
Yeah, no, that's not something I have. I, for a while, was doing I tried to do more of that like $0 budgeting is what it's called when you try and make sure that your budget at the end of the month is zeroed out. Like everything has given a home. And I realized that like, I think this is just my personality in general. I tend to get a little bit obsessive about things, and I would get like so stressy about like trying to make sure I was hitting every like dollar amount properly.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it's sometimes like you're supposed to set targets, and if it's like not fully funded, it's like yellow, and sometimes that does. I'm like, oh, I just want them all to be green. I just want them all to be filled, and you can't.
And for some of the things, there was a lot of flexibility. So I realized what was best for me, and again, everybody has their own thing, is doing, I try and follow a 50, 30, 20 split like you do, but I'm much looser about it. Going back to expenses, I pay myself first. Like, so I have automated things for my rent. My mortgage goes to a separate account out of my paycheck immediately. So I never even see it. I never even know that is part of my like paycheck balance. I'm a big fan of separate accounts. So everything is just kind of like placed where it needs to go automatically. I do that with my savings. I do that with everything. Then I'm like, okay, I have $2,000 left at the end of this, after everything has been sorted out. And I never want my checking account to be below $500. Yeah. And then I just kind of like, which is, again, this is what works for me personally. Yeah. I just kind of vibes.
Yeah.
I think I know what I want to prioritize. I know that like maybe I have a new rule for myself where I'm like, I don't want to spend more than $50 on happy hours when I go out to eat or something like that. So I'm very conscious of that. I just like track to make sure that I'm keeping.
And do you use a certain tool for tracking?
No, I have used Mint in the past. I know that they have now deprecated Mint. That's no longer an accessible option. I've heard great things about YNAB for years, honestly. Yeah. I've tracked my expenses in a Google spreadsheet every month where I used
to do that too.
Yeah.
The hard part about that is like once you get off by like one amount and the spreadsheet doesn't match what's in your bank account, it just would drive me
nutso.
Bananas. And usually I would input a restaurant receipt before tip was added.
Yes.
And then tip would be retroactively added later, but I would be like, okay, my spreadsheet is off by $7.23, and I don't know why.
And
and then it becomes useless.
Those things just kind of stressed me out overly much. So I've moved to a more flexible system. I think finances are just like a top of mind thing. So I will say, and again, do what works for you. I check my bank account.
Yeah, I was going to ask how.
It used to be every morning I would check my bank account before I got out of bed. I would look at my bank account, and I'd still check it probably like 3 to 4 times a week.
Yeah.
Just because that way I'm very much aware of what I'm spending and when I'm spending it.
Because if you don't, then it could get out of control quickly if you don't. That was what I was doing. I was avoiding checking my bank account.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to know until I get the text, you overdrafted. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's
and
bad.
when I made the jump from being very tight with my finances, like not having a job or like whatever, to like having more flexible income, I was that avoidant person. I refused to look at it because I was like, it's going to tell me something bad. It's going to tell me something so bad. And I just like don't want to know.
Yeah.
And I would overuse my credit card, which is, again, is a whole credit cards are a whole different thing.
We're going to talk about credit cards here in a bit because I think that's a big one.
But now I check it multiple times a week. And again, I think the biggest hack for me personally was I have a separate bank account for my bills.
I think that's really smart.
That way I never have to think about my bills. And then I get to have like a lump sum of like eating out, groceries. And I will say another thing that we probably should go into is how to split expenses with a partner. Because I think that's, if you are a single girly, your rent category is probably bigger because you are paying all of that yourself. Groceries, for example, like your
utilities.
I don't put a separate amount. I don't keep a separate amount in mind for groceries because Nick and I have a joint credit card. And all of our joint expenses just go on there. And I pay a set amount each month on that joint credit card.
That's nice.
So it's definitely a different way of doing it. Nick and I also we met at work. So we've always been and we in the exact same role. So we've always known how much each other has made. I know that there's, for some couples, you don't talk about that until months down the road.
Yeah.
But we've always made within the same like 10K range of one another. So we split everything 50-50.
Yeah. Adam and I do too. Yeah. I mean, I think, our jobs are much harder to compare, but we looked at kind of gross income, before taxes from last year's taxes. And we're like, okay, I think we're about like 10 to 15K apart. So we're the same. We split 50-50. Now, sometimes if we go on a date night and Adam insists on like paying for dinner, but then I'll be like, I'll get, happy hour. Sometimes we pick up things and we don't split it down to the cent, but utilities, groceries, the things that like our house, all of that, like when we bought a new bed, it was like, we're just going to split everything down the middle.
That's a big
We use Splitwise. So I love Splitwise, especially like for
we should make a list of all of the apps that I'm going to start writing these out because we have so many different apps that we like come back to.
Yeah.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but like I found out about Splitwise on, I think it was like a birthday trip.
I think I told you about it.
I think you told me about it. Yeah. You set one up for my birthday trip.
Yes.
And we all everyone can put in what they've spent and who was splitting it. And then the app does the math so that if you have to, I owe Taylor $20 and I owe Alexis $15 because it just does the math based on like who's paying for what. And
you can do it by percent. Like it doesn't have to be evenly split. You can do percent. Like this person owes 60% of this bill and 40%. Like you can do all of those different things.
It's really handy. So I really was using it just for like group trips or when you and I would go to like ACL Fest or things like that. But when Adam and I moved in together, I was like, are you open to using it for our expenses so we don't have to just like manually calculate because we don't have a joint credit card or a joint bank account. We're not at that point yet, which I hope in the future we probably will. But for now, this is how it works. And, he does all the grocery shopping. He has the expense for the new bed we bought. He's got the Wi-Fi and then I've got like gas, electric, things like that. So then we all throw it in and then we figure out how much I Venmo him. Usually it's me Venmoing him.
Do you guys do it monthly? Like how do you settle up your Splitwise?
Yeah, we do it monthly. We just have an ongoing group called like A&A monthly expenses and we'll settle up so it clears out the balance, but it doesn't close the group out.
Gotcha,
So we just add it in, and we do it twice a month. We'll do it like the expenses in the first half when that's like my first pay period.
Gotcha.
And then expenses in the second half of the month. So
that's a great way of doing it. Nick and I, before we like got our first joint account, we were just kind of doing things 50-50. Again, we like knew how much the other person made up front, which again is a different conversation to have if that's not something that all of our listeners have in place right now, like that sort of like dialogue with their partners. And then we graduated to having a joint. When we bought our first home, got a joint account.
You know, at that point, I'm like, you guys are building your life together. You have made significant investment in each other by purchasing a home together. I think you're okay.
But even for the joint account, I will say another thing my mom always told me is always have your own money.
Yeah.
Like always have your own account. And like, that's just something, again, that has been very top of mind for me always.
Is it a joint credit card or a joint banking account?
So we started with a joint bank account where it was like I invited him to like my banking ecosystem at the time. And we would just put in the same amount, we would put in X amount of dollars per paycheck. So like we would each put in $300 per paycheck or like plus our amount for the mortgage. Or our mortgage got paid out of there. It came with a debit card and we would pay for dinners or whatever on that debit card. So that way it wasn't like we didn't have full access to each other's accounts. We had a set amount of money in this joint account per month.
That's actually kind of smart.
And that way you have no access to other people. You're not worrying about like me seeing how much Nick has or me spending more than my allotment because we have put in the same amount of money and then this is our money to do what we want with.
I really like that because I could honestly see it as like, this is our money for our monthly date nights, like, and we use this one card for it and we both contributed the same amount. So we know it's always a 50-50 split.
Yeah.
I like
and then
that.
From there, we graduated to having a joint credit card together. So now most of our shared expenses are on this credit card.
And do you pay it with the shared bank account
No,
still?
so now we don't, that shared bank account is only where our mortgage money comes out of. Our mortgage and like the bills that you can't put on a credit, like I think our gas is associated with that account. And that both of that account is still like we automatically put money into it each month.
Yeah, that's the one that you, like you said, your paycheck just automatically puts some of it
X
in there.
amount per paycheck in that.
And then, most people just, sorry to interrupt, but check with your employer because most employers you can set up that your paycheck can go to different accounts.
I think that is truly the biggest hack. And you can do it percentage-wise. You can do like 50% here, you can do whatever. Or you can even set it up by percentages in a lot of times where like 25% goes or dollar amount. So $800 goes here. I have another account where these are my actual numbers, fun fact. I have $800 per paycheck goes into mine and Nick's joint account for mortgage and like those bills. I have $300 a month goes into another account for my car payment and our water bill. I'm in charge of our water bill. And then I have in my HR system, it just says remainder goes into that. So that way, if your money fluctuates month to month or like you get a bonus or you get a third pay, like these categories where my bills are coming from are always set. And then my fun money is the one that like is flexible. And that's how I, again, prefer it. So check with your employer, like Ali said, and talk to your HR person. If you have Rippling, Bamboo HR, Just Works, let me know. I can help you. I've worked with those before.
That's so funny.
But so yeah, I have $800 in one, $300 in another account, and then remainder is my money. And now we have a joint credit card where all of our like travel expenses go on together. If we go out to dinner, stuff like that.
So do you just get the statement and then you split it kind of 50-50?
And then I'll Venmo Nick usually about $1,000 to cover that because he has that credit card. Yeah. And I have access to it. I just don't look at it.
Yeah.
And that is what has worked for us. I will say because again, like how sometimes Adam wants to pick up the check for this or you want to pay for happy hour. In our relationship, if one person wants to do something like, again, I wanted to go out to Fall Out Boy or I want to go to somewhere, I pay for that. Yeah. Because that is something that I want to do. It's not
sometimes I can get Adam to like, if he's like in a save money mode and just wants to eat at home, I'm like, can we go out to eat? My treat. Like, and just because I want to do it, but I want him to come with me.
Yeah. Or like birthday dinners, like I usually pay for his birthday.
Yeah.
Or if Nick wants to do a present for me, like that doesn't come out of.
Can you imagine 50-50 pay my present?
I will say,
but sometimes
we do that. Like if there is a big purchase, like recently I was buying a new squat rack for I was buying a new squat rack and Nick was like, oh, as part of your Christmas present, this is something I was buying anyways. As part of your Christmas present, I want to pay for like half of your squat rack.
That's so
nice, we put the squat rack on our joint credit card because I was like, well, you want to pay for half? Like this is the easiest way to split instead of you Venmoing me.
Yeah.
So there's definitely like flexibility and nuance that way. But that's how it's worked for us.
That. Yeah. I think that's
the joint bank account where a certain amount is going into, I think was a really
I feel like we might look at that. We both now have SoFi. You actually introduced me to SoFi.
I love. If you guys want a fucking referral code, let me know. You guys get like $100 or $50. I mean, you can fight. You can use both. But
Taylor introduced me to SoFi, and it is such a great bank. And I got Adam to join. I got my sister to join now. Yeah. So highly, highly recommend if you are looking or in the market for a new bank. And this was something I'm going to talk about more next week. But the reason that it got me into SoFi was the 4.6% APY on savings account balances.
Which is just insane.
My savings, oh my God, it's just like I'm getting just free money for having it in a savings account with them.
Yeah.
So
that's another little, maybe at the end of this whole series, we'll compile all our tips and tricks. But another one is use high yield savings accounts where at all possible. Yeah. You will get so much bang for your buck if you do that. And it's just, I wish I had known
earlier. Even for the checking account, like SoFi is 1.5%. And I remember when I was previously had a Chase Bank checking account, it's like 0.25. So that was nothing. I was getting like $1.
If that.
Yeah. So
that's how I think about spending.
Yeah.
I'm much more flexible than you are. I guess kind of transition to our next section. I do use some of my fun money to pay certain debts that come up. So like my student loans come out of there. Those gym payments that I talked about earlier that are a big part of my monthly recurring expenses come out of like my fun money.
Yep.
And again, I know what I don't want my checking account to go below. And since I check my accounts so regularly, I am constantly aware. I'm like, okay, I have $400 left to spend for the next 2 weeks. Like, I know I have a bachelorette party next week and I need to spend things wisely. So my way is definitely a little bit more high maintenance, honestly, is probably the best way of saying it than yours is.
Because I would say like with YNAB, I check it every Monday and that's really all I do. It automatically links to my bank account. So it imports my purchases and I spend 15 minutes just like matching things. So I'll like code, Matt's El Rancho category eating out, and OTF is my fitness Orange Theory category. And then once I match everything, it shows me, oh, you have 4 overspent categories. And then I have to go and move things around. But then I know like going into that week, like where I stand with things. And I will say like it's helped me a lot like with my savings. So I think that's just, how each person looks at how they want to look at it each week.
Totally. So. In terms of like debts and expenses and the fun things.
We got them.
We all have them. And I know that people like to have like good debt and bad debt. And I will say I don't personally, this is just me, I don't love that differentiation. There are things that are like credit card debt is very, very different just fundamentally than student loan debt.
Yeah.
But I just put car loan stuff, which too, honestly, I know that people consider car payments good debt. But I think that car payments, specifically car payments are a very subjective category. I don't think every car payment is a good debt.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you bought a car that is outside of your means.
Yeah.
And then it's not a good debt because you're paying $800 a month. Like that's absurd.
No, I would agree. I think that when it comes with debt, I mean, it kind of ties into the credit score category. And what I've learned a lot around what makes up your credit score, part of it is your debt and how much debt you have and what kind of debt you have and just the different types that make it up. Because a car payment, they do usually categorize as like, that is good debt in a credit score's mind, because they're like, you're paying that monthly and it's a diverse category. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really know too much, but it's weird that if you have debt, sometimes it's a good thing and it helps your credit score go up.
It's honestly very counterintuitive. And one of my coworkers... Because
for me, I'm like, I don't want any debt.
I don't want any debt. One of my coworkers actually worked at the company where they created, like where they invented credit scores. And fun fact, credit scores have only been around since like the 1970s. And
I think I read that, yeah.
Plenty of people have been purchasing and living life without credit scores. And if you have a less than ideal credit score, I do want you to know that like is not indicative of who you are as a person.
And you can make small changes to start to grow your credit score.
Yes. In terms of debts that like I have, I'll say it again. We were being very open and honest and vulnerable in this conversation. And hopefully this inspires y'all to be equally honest and vulnerable with yourself. I have my mortgage, obviously, which would love to not have a mortgage, but like I'm not paying down a couple of $100,000 overnight. I have my car payment. I still have student loan debt, and I have credit card. I have I have like $2,000 on my credit card. And I will say, I know that this is a hot topic issue about how to approach credit card debt. I personally, and I've done this maybe 3 times in my life, actually. I know that people say that when you have a lot of credit card debt, you should consolidate it onto a zero balance transfer credit card and like pay that off. Like usually
zero interest.
Zero interest,
yeah.
That's the word.
Yeah.
I personally prefer to take out a loan. I will wipe out the entire credit card debt with that loan, and then I will pay the loan off is how I prefer to do it. I don't want multiple credit cards. I don't trust myself, honestly, to have that option, and I just don't like it. So I also have a personal loan from the last time I paid off my credit card that I pay. It's even $200 a month to pay off, and and that's, I mean, we can dive.
Is there interest on that?
There is still interest on it, but
it's probably lower than the credit card.
It's lower than doing it on a credit card. Like a credit card, unless it's a zero balance transfer, which obviously is a thing. Yeah. My current loan that I have is a 6% interest rate.
Yeah, but that's what I was saying, is that most credit card interest rates are like 20, can be like 20%,
right.
24%.
So after you have your 0% time, it goes up to that higher percentage.
Yeah.
So this way I get to stay consistent. I don't feel the pressure if something else happens in my life to have pay it off within 18 months. And again, I'm a much more flexible, high maintenance person when it comes to my finances than other people are. So if that is what works for you, like by all means do it. But it's easiest for me to just wipe it all out and know that I have a set payment every month for X amount of months, and I can pay off things earlier. I've never, again, this is like the 3rd time I've done it, and I've never taken the full term of the loan. I've always paid it off faster, and that's been helpful for me personally.
Yeah, I've looked into personal loans before, but never pulled the trigger. But I have done the zero interest balance transfer. So I do have a Citi card that I moved money from my Chase Sapphire Reserve over to. Now, the problem with that you should be careful with if you are thinking about doing that, is if you use your full credit limit on that card.
That's what I don't like.
So let's just use some made up numbers. Say that your Citi or your 0% interest card is like a $6,000, let's use $5,000 limit for easy math. And you've got, let's just say, $15,000 on a high interest credit card. So you're like, I'm going to move the $5,000 over. So now you have $10,000 on here and you got $5,000 with zero interest. Well, now your credit score is going to dip because you're at 99% utilization of that card.
And that's honestly why I do the loans, because it does not impact your credit score in the same way, because your credit utilization is not being calculated. So your credit card will generally go up because your utilization has gone down so much, and you just have a new credit line on your loan, on your credit profile.
Yeah.
Which they like when you have more lines of credit. It's very counterintuitive. The credit score system is fundamentally flawed.
I know. So I was just looking at Experian, which is another app that I use.
I use Experian as well.
Yeah. And I was pulling up like my credit cards and credit lines, and I actually have 18, which is kind of crazy.
Your student loans, like,
but I have 4, 5. I have 6 cards. 2 of those.
6 cards?
Yes, but 2 of them were like, one was a Care credit card that I got when I had high vet bills.
Okay.
So it has a $0 balance. One was when I got one when I bought a nice bicycle from Austin Bike Shop. Like, it was a Synchronized, which is the brand for the bike credit card. So also a 0. And then 2 Amexes, one of which I'm an authorized user, my Citi card, and my Chase Sapphire card. And then I have my car loan. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 student loans.
I will say I did consolidate that's why I joined SoFi in the first place. I joined SoFi as a student loan consolidation, and then I just love their banking as well.
Yeah, so I probably need to look at that, because some of these I'm looking, they're like under $1,000. So it's just like, I'll probably be paying those off next and then working on the ones that are still a little bit higher.
Yeah. Don't be, I think our society, again, makes you feel like shameful if you have a debt. And I
remember when I had high credit card debt and I was really stressing about it, and I disclosed to a few people, and to find out that other people also were dealing with that. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, can we just build like a little support system to like make us not feel like so hopeless or so terrified by it?
You're not doing in some cases, maybe you are doing something wrong, and you should look at your spending habits, like going back to step 1 of like really checking what you're spending money on and like being intentional. I think we had an episode about that a few weeks ago. That was my solo about being intentional.
Yeah.
So like be intentional about what you're fucking spending on too. But like you're not a bad person. Like my credits, I will say, my credit cards, I really ramped up usage for the first time when I was between jobs. And I put all of my expenses on my credit card. I had no money incoming. Yep. And then my car broke down and I needed a car. So I put all of the repairs on my credit card. And then interest rates started coming. And then it was just like this spiral.
Snowball of just, and that was how I got into credit card debt. Was I went on a European vacation. I put a lot of charges on it. I definitely was like, we were eating out for every meal, you know, and I was not holding back. We were there for, almost 2 weeks, and I just never was able to pay it off.
Yeah.
And the interest kept building and building and building. And it went from $4,000 on there to $5,000 to $7,000 to $10,000. And then it was like, oh my gosh, like, I need to make a plan to get out of this.
Yeah.
So.
And I do think, again, that it comes back to like making that plan, and whether your plan is YNAB, which you and many others have spoken so highly about. If your plan is just like checking your bank account every single day, and that way you are on top of things, like
building a spreadsheet,
find
what works for you.
If you, and this is not something I've tried, this does not work for me personally, but like maybe you're a cash person. Yeah. Maybe you take out X amount of money in dollar bills, and that's what you spend for the next pay period, the next month, whatever. Like, find whatever works for you, and don't be afraid to experiment. I think that's also something that we say very often, is like try different things, see what works.
Yeah. Well,
that was a lot.
That was a lot. So we're going to put together our list of apps and tips and tools, and I think
resources.
We might put a couple in the show notes, but we also might wait and just do a bigger list at the end of the 3rd episode. But if you have any thoughts on expenses and spending and things that we didn't talk about that you found helpful for your own life, like,
I would also
share.
I would love to hear more about what other people do when it comes to expenses and their partners.
Yeah.
I think everybody has, just like every relationship is different, every money relationship is different. Maybe way more than your partner does, and that's a different dichotomy. Or like maybe your partner is going back to school, so they're actually not bringing in any income. Like, how do you approach that? I'm very curious, and I know that other listeners are probably experiencing similar things. I think your 30s are a time for reinvention in some cases, and you do have people going back to we have multiple friends who have like gone back to school.
Or you're starting your family, or you're buying your first house. Like, there's all these things when you just need to like buckle down and get a hold and be a responsible owner of your finances.
Yeah.
And
you get to control your finances, not the other way around. And I know it feels the other way around sometimes.
It can feel like that, but 100%. So.
And then as a reminder, before we jump into our song of the week, we will be talking about saving.
Yeah, savings, income,
making more money.
Positives,
the positive sides of it.
So if this is the negative, like the minus on your balance sheet, we're talking about the plus sign of your balance sheet next week.
So I'm really excited for that. I think that like we've found similar methods of saving now that really, really work for us. And I don't know. Like,
it's just the different types of savings and all that good stuff. So.
Allie, what's your song of the week?
Okay, my song of the week, I'm so excited, is I heard this when we were driving to Lake Charles. It is a cover of As It Was by, so Harry Styles is obviously who sings it, but this band is called Prep, but it's all capital. So Prep, Prep. And it is very like a funky sort of 70s rendition.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
As It Was.
We'll have to listen to that after this.
What's your song?
My song of the week is Bills, Bills, Bills by Destiny's Child. Because you know what? We've been talking about bills. There's fun bills. There's not so fun bills. There's fucking student loan payments. Like, it just felt so timely. So Bills, Bills, Bills. And also, I will say I haven't listened to Cowboy Carter yet. But maybe it's also in honor of that. I don't know.
I was going to say, too, the other Destiny's Child song, like Independence.
Oh,
like, pay my own
bills. I don't actually remember.
I don't know either. Well, it's about being an independent woman, though.
Pay my telephone bill, pay my automobile, pay my... Dun, 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 and me are done. I know you guys come to this podcast for our singing, so you are welcome. Okay, well, it's been a great episode. I hope you guys felt... I don't want to say validated, but like I hope that you feel comfortable enough to have these conversations with your friends, especially when it comes to talking about salary and some of those like touchier subjects that we'll get into next week. But like, be honest with yourself, talk to your partner, talk to your friends, like
talk to your family.
Talk to your family.
Yeah. You don't have to be alone in like your finances, especially if you are dealing with maybe more debt than you hope to have or than you want to have.
And if you're in a time of like trying to get your finances and you know that you can't spend as much, you definitely need to talk to your friends then. Like, how can we find free things to do or like low cost things to do? So just be open and communicate.
All right.
All right. Until next week, y'all. Cheers.
Cheers.